The forest is never truly silent, and the mirror never shows only what we expect. Tonight, I'll share 6 chilling true horror stories, tales of foggy woods where eyes are always watching and reflections that don't belong to us. Before we begin, if you enjoy true horror stories told in the dark, make sure you subscribe, click the bell, and leave a like. That way you'll never miss the shadows waiting in the next story. The woods can be endless when the fog closes in. Every tree looks the same, every path feels like it leads deeper into nowhere. But what's worse is the feeling that someone, or something, is already there watching just out of sight. This first story is about a girl who stepped into the foggy woods, only to realize the eyes were already waiting for her. The air was thick with mist as Clara stepped onto the narrow path leading into the old woods. It was said the forest had a mind of its own, shifting and turning when you weren't looking, swallowing travelers whole. But Clara was not superstitious. She was there for a weekend of solitude to connect with nature, away from the noise of the city. As she walked deeper, the trees grew denser, their twisted branches clawing at the sky like gnarled fingers. A chill settled in her bones, but she pressed on, determined to reach a small clearing she had heard about. With each step, the sunlight seemed to fade, shadows stretching and pulling at her perception of time. She came to a clearing, its center dominated by a gnarled old tree. The bark cracked like old leather and something about it drew her in. Kneeling beside it, she noticed what seemed to be markings, symbols carved into the wood, symbols that looked both familiar and distant. Clara traced a finger along one, feeling a shiver run up her spine as it pulsed beneath her touch, as if alive. Suddenly she heard a rustling. The sound was distant, but echoed louder, and she turned, scanning the tree line for movement. A low, whispering voice filled the air, beckoning her with soft, melodic tones. Join us, it sang rhythmically like a lullaby. Her heart raced, fear gnawed at her thoughts, pushing her instincts to flee. But curiosity anchored her feet to the ground. The whispers grew more insistent. Stay with us, they called, gently promising warmth, a sense of belonging. She stepped back, the fog thickening around her, weaving in and out of her vision. Shadows danced, shifting, and through them, glowing eyes emerged, dozens of them staring and blinking in unison as if they had been waiting for her. Clara's mind raced, her logical thoughts battling against a primal urge drawing her closer. The tree loomed ominously, and she could almost feel its hunger, an insatiable craving. Stay, the voice whispered, wrapping around her like silk, binding her with unseen threads. As she fell to her knees, captivated, the shadows swirled closer. Only then did she notice their forms, twisted figures made of bark and stone, merging with the mist. They reached for her, but not with hands. They extended tendrils of smoke that coiled around her wrists like shackles, tugging her toward the tree. She gasped, struggling to resist. The markings on the tree pulsed aggressively now, the whispers rising to a cacophony. Join us, Clara, become one of us. Panic surged through her as she fought against their grasp, her arms straining as they pulled. With an adrenaline-fueled scream, Clara broke free and raced back down the path, her chest heaving, the whispers trailing off into angry hisses behind her. But beyond the clearing, the forest felt different. The path twisted underfoot, the trees closing in as if mocking her escape. Clara's heart pounded as she ran headlong, but no matter how fast she ran, the trees merely shifted, confounding her sense of direction, leading her deeper rather than closer to freedom. As night fell, the mist thickened into a shroud, smothering her with darkness. Desperation clawed at her throat. She could hear them, those whispers, calling her name softly now, laced with a familiar intimacy, weaving into her mind, planting seeds of doubt. Clara, you belong with us, it insisted in a voice she swore she recognized. You can't escape. Then, through the disorienting fog, she caught sight of something bright, a flickering light. Something in her soul stirred with hope as she sprinted towards it, but as she burst through the brush, she froze. It was the clearing again, with that old tree, its branches forming twisted hands reaching out, welcoming her back. The pulse of the tree slowed, and the forest fell silent, allowing a deep, suffocating peace to envelop her. The shadows encircled her once more, and she felt a heaviness in her heart, a creeping acceptance. "Join us," they sang, now in perfect harmony. For in the darkness of that ancient woods, Clara wasn't fleeing but returning, the pulse of the tree syncing with her own. As her thoughts faded, the last remnants of her identity slipping away, a voice as soft as morning mist whispered, "Welcome home. Our journey through the woods isn't over yet." Ahead lies a lonely cabin, hidden beneath the trees, holding secrets no one was meant to uncover. Let's step inside. In the heart of a fog-shrouded forest, there existed a dilapidated cabin, long abandoned and shunned by the locals. Whispers danced through the trees, tales of a presence that lingered in the stillness. No one dared to visit, despite the pull of curiosity that lay heavy in the air. One autumn evening, compelled by an insatiable need to confront his fears, a young man named Derek decided to explore the forsaken cabin. As he approached, the brittle leaves crunched beneath his feet, each sound swallowed by the oppressive quiet. The moonlight struggled to pierce the thick fog, casting an eerie glow that painted the pitch-black shadows into a swirling dance of shapes. He felt a shiver snake down his spine, the air thick with foreboding. The cabin loomed before him, its wooden planks warped and covered in layers of moss, as if nature itself sought to reclaim the space. Pushing the creaking door open, he stepped inside. The gloom engulfed him, and the stale air reeked of decay. His flashlight beam flickered, illuminating dust-covered furniture and darkened corners that seemed to breathe. Patterns of mildew spread across the walls, resembling lurking figures. Derek's heart raced, but he pressed on, a mix of dread and exhilaration propelling him deeper into the cabin's bowels. As he explored, he noticed a strange symbol carved into the floor, a circle surrounded by cryptic runes worn by time. The instinct to turn back clawed at him, but he felt magnetized by the bizarre etching suspended between fear and fascination. Moments passed, his heartbeat thudding loudly, echoing through the silence. When a sudden cold breeze swept through the room, it felt alive, intertwining with his very essence. Derek turned sharply toward the window, feeling a gaze pierce through the fog. For just a fleeting moment, he thought he saw a figure standing there, cloaked in shadows, its face obscured. Panic surged. Was he really alone? He backpedaled, eyes darting toward the exit, but the door slammed shut, echoing like thunder in the hushed space. He pounded on the door, adrenaline surging. But it wouldn't budge. The air thickened, pressing down on him like a weight. The flashlight flickered again, and in the dim light, surrounded by towering darkness, he could sense a shape coiling just beyond the reach of his vision, something watching, waiting. The room felt like it was swelling, squeezing him tighter until the walls cracked and whispered his name, a soft, taunting echo that made his skin crawl. Suddenly, Derek sprinted toward the corner, heart racing, desperate to escape. But something blocked his path, a wall of impenetrable darkness. He turned to look behind him, only to find the figure now closer, emerging from the shadows, draped in tattered cloth that flowed like smoke. Its face was obscured, but he could feel its eyes boring into him, filled with ancient malice. "Let me go," he shouted, voice trembling, backing away into the cold embrace of the wall. The figure did not move, but an awful dread churned in his stomach. It lifted a finger, pointing straight at him. Fear wrapped around him like a noose when he heard a voice, a low, chilling whisper that whispered fragments of his deepest, darkest fears, playing with his mind. "You can't escape yourself," it hissed, and with that the world spun. The walls melted into darkness, wrapping around him like a shroud until he could no longer discern where he began, and the darkness ended. The last thing he felt was a surge of weightlessness. Derek awoke outside the cabin, a cold sweat soaking his shirt. The panic from his dream echoed in his mind as he gazed back at the cabin, now the night sky twinkling innocently above. For a fleeting second, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. But in the silence of the woods, he heard it, a soft, familiar whisper riding the wind. You can't escape yourself. He froze, the realization slamming into him like an icy wave. Turning abruptly, he stumbled away, only to find that every path led back to the cabin. The cabin was no longer abandoned in whispers. It was alive, watching him, waiting for the moment he would slip back inside, breaking like glass on the edge of an endless night. And now we reach the final tale of the night. A fog thicker than shadows, a forest older than memory, and whispers that seem to come from nowhere. This last story may linger with you long after it ends. In thick from the woods, wrapping the small town of Eldridge in a suffocating shroud. A dusting of twilight settled over the streets, as street lamps flickered uncertainly, casting weary shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. Jennifer, a newcomer, had always found comfort in solitude, but now, a chill crawled along her spine, men urging her to lock her doors tightly against the encroaching night. She adjusted the collar of her jacket and stepped outside, cool air biting at her skin. The woods loomed ominously at the edge of town, dark silhouettes of ancient trees standing sentinel. She glanced at the path leading into the heart of the forest, where tales of lost wanderers echoed in hushed tones. Eldridge was steeped in ghost stories, each family having their own tale of tragedy and despair, but Jennifer dismissed them as mere folklore. As she made her way to the local diner for a warm meal, the fog thickened around her ankles, swirling like restless spirits. The air felt alive, charged as if something was watching. A shudder traversed her body, and she quickened her pace, the comforting glow of the diner barely visible in the distance. Inside, the walls were lined with faded photographs, their faces frozen in time, their eyes following her movements. The few patrons, a pair of old men and a solitary woman, sat in silence, avoiding her gaze. She ordered a coffee, trying to shake the feeling of being an intruder in this strange place. But the waitress, with her hollow eyes and weary smile, leaned in close and whispered, "Stay away from the woods." Jennifer's heart raced. "What?" she asked, but the waitress simply moved away as if the question did not merit an answer. With each sip of coffee, the unsettling atmosphere thickened, and her mind reeled with curiosity and dread. As she managed small talk with the men, they shifted uneasily. "You'll learn," one murmured, looking toward the window. "The woods take things and sometimes give them back." He let the implication hang heavy in the air before turning back to the table. Defiance sparked within her. "I'm not afraid," she declared, rising to leave. The old men exchanged knowing glances, but she brushed past them, the cold grip of fog trailing behind her. As she approached the edge of the woods, a small storm of apprehension clutched at her chest. The treetops swayed gently, almost beckoning her in, whispers swirling like the fog around her. Just a peek, she told herself, stepping onto the path. Each step deeper into the woods felt like an unraveling thread, her heartbeat echoing against the silence. Then a low rustling came from her left. She spun around, but there was nothing but darkness. Pressing on, a strange sound emerged from within the trees, a melodic humming that seemed to call to her. She followed it, each footfall feeling heavier, as if the ground itself resisted her intrusion. The air shifted, and for a fleeting moment she glimpsed a figure, pale, almost ethereal, dancing just beyond the reach of the fog. Its movements were fluid, hypnotic, drawing her closer. "Is someone there?" she shouted, her voice swallowed by the thickening mist. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by silence so profound it felt alive. Panic surged in her throat, and she spun back the way she came. But the path was gone. The trees, towering and gnarled, twisted into shapes that loomed over her, stretching and shifting as if they were alive. A chill spread through her. What was it they had said in the diner? The woods take things. As the fog twisted and coiled around her ankles, the whispers returned, now filled with laughter, echoes of those who had wandered in before her. She stumbled, heart racing, and met the gaze of the woman from the diner, her eyes now hollow and devoid of light, as she stood upon the very path that had led Jennifer astray. "I told you," the figure said, lips curling into an unsettling smile. "Welcome back." Jennifer's scream was swallowed by the woods, and the fog rolled in thick once more, leaving nothing but rustling leaves behind. The town of Eldridge continued its quiet existence, blissfully unaware of another soul lost to the fog. 3 stories, each one reminding us that the woods hide more than branches and roots. Shadows move where no one should stand. Voices whisper where no one should speak. But the unknown doesn't only live in the forest. Sometimes it stares back at us from the mirror, and sometimes it takes a form we wish we'd never seen. If you've made it this far, it means you enjoy staying in the dark as much as I do. So take a moment to subscribe. It helps keep these stories alive, and it makes sure you never miss the next one waiting just ahead. A mirror is supposed to be simple, glass and silver, nothing more. It reflects, but it doesn't think. At least, that's what we tell ourselves. This next story is about someone who looked into a mirror and saw something that shouldn't exist. The fog crept through the ancient trees like a shroud, thickening with each passing moment. The towering pines, gnarled and twisted, stood as silent sentinels, guarding the secrets of the forest. A low, lonely howl echoed in the distance, sending shivers down Mary's spine. She clutched her flashlight tightly, its feeble beam barely piercing the thick curtain of mist that surrounded her. Mary had entered the forest on a dare, her friends' laughter still ringing in her ears. "It's just a stupid story," they had said. "Nothing but old wives' tales." But as the evening light faded, the stories had taken root in her mind. Whispers of an entity that prowled these woods, a ghostly figure seeking the lost and luring the unwary into its embrace. With each step, the path grew more treacherous, the underbrush clawing at her jeans as if it wanted to pull her back. The world around her seemed to hum with an unseen energy, and the branches swayed ominously, casting grotesque shadows in her flashlight's glow. Mary called out for her friends, her voice trembling, but the only response was the wind, which seemed to mock her. She stumbled upon a clearing, the trees parting as if to reveal a hidden secret. At the center lay a decaying cabin, its windows shattered, the door creaking slightly as if inviting her inside. Heart racing, she approached, compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity. The air was heavy, saturated with the scent of moss and damp wood. She stepped inside, the room dark save for her flashlight beam, which flickered as if it sensed the danger lurking within. Old furniture lay strewn about in disarray, remnants of a life long abandoned. A musty smell mingled with a hint of something metallic, each breath a reminder that she was not alone. As the light danced across the walls, her heart dropped. There were scratches, deep and jagged, carved into the wood as if someone had tried to escape. Panic surged through her veins. Should she turn back? But something caught her eye. A mirror, tarnished and cracked, hung on the far wall. She moved closer, fascinated. Her own reflection stared back, but just beside it, she noticed a shadowy form lingering just out of reach, its features indistinguishable. She blinked and it was gone. The room spun, her breath quickening. "It's just a trick of the light," she whispered to herself, though her voice quaked with doubt. With trembling hands, she reached out to touch the mirror's surface, drawn in by the dark abyss it seemed to reflect. Suddenly a low whisper coiled around her, a voice slithering from the depths of the cabin walls. "Help me," it breathed softly. Mary recoiled, confusion and dread battling within her. Was it a plea or a curse? She turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, echoing like a gunshot in the stillness. Her heart raced and the temperature plummeted, ice settling in her bones. Panic boiled within her as shadows flickered around her, merging into the form she had seen in the mirror. It was tall, its limbs stretched unnaturally long, fingers curled into sinister claws, and its face a void, eyes deep wells of despair. "Why do you linger?" it hissed, voice distorted and layered as if 1,000 voices spoke in unison. Mary stepped back, but the figure advanced, its presence suffocating. "You're here to help me, you're just like the rest." In that moment, realization dawned, a chilling insight that froze her soul. She was not the first to enter the woods. Friends' voices echoed in her mind, each one a memory, a promise of laughter vanished. They had been drawn into the same trap, their fates intertwined with this ghastly creature. "No," she wailed, turning to the mirror, desperate to escape. But the reflection showed the cabin forevermore, a prison devoid of hope. The door rattled, and the figure lunged toward her, becoming one with the shadows. As darkness enveloped her senses, the last thing Mary heard was the soft, mocking whisper, "Welcome home." Our journey continues. This next encounter with a mirror reveals something far darker than a reflection, something that was never meant to be seen. The forest loomed ahead, a dark curtain against the dusk sky. Old oaks twisted like gnarled fingers reaching toward the heavens, their branches whispering tales long forgotten. Climbing into his SUV, Ethan felt a sudden urge to drive closer to the heart of the woods. He wasn't an adventurous man, but something about those trees beckoned him. As he trudged along the path, shadows danced alongside him, flickering in the dense underbrush. The sun dipped lower, and the air turned heavy, pregnant with foreboding silence. A chill ran down his spine, but he dismissed it as the cooling evening breeze. After several minutes of walking, he stumbled upon an old cabin shackled by time and overgrown ivy. The windows were obscured by grime, yet a flicker of candlelight flickered inside. Curiosity tugged at him, pulling him toward the door, creaking on its rusted hinges like an old man's brittle joints. Inside, the air was thick with dust, memories suspended like cobwebs. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight. On the wall hung a series of photographs, faded black and white images capturing nightmarish moments. Figures blurred and twisted, their eyes void, mouths gaping as if caught in shrieks of despair. Each image felt alive, a scream frozen in time. Ethan's breath quickened, a primal sense of being watched crawling over his skin. He turned to leave but froze. At the far end of the room stood a mirror, its surface dark and cracked, reflecting only shadows. Something stirred within. He stepped closer, drawn by an unseen force. As his heart pounded in his chest, he caught a glimpse, his reflection rippling like the surface of disturbed water. It grinned back at him but then morphed into something grotesque. Fangs elongated, eyes gleamed with malice. Laughter neither his nor human echoed from the depths of that glass prison. Fear surged through him, a venom coursing through his veins. He stumbled back, tripping over the journal that lay on the floor. Its pages flickered open, revealing scribbled horrors, prayers mixed with curses. Words like, "They come for you and never break the glass," screamed from the paper. A realization dawned, heavy and chilling. Around him, the chilling whispers grew louder, voices mixing in a chaotic chorus. The wooden beams of the cabin groaned as if the house itself were alive, a predator waiting to strike. Ethan's eyes darted back to the mirror, where his reflection was no longer there. Instead, he saw shadows moving behind him. He whirled around, but the room lay empty, yet the whispers intensified, wrapping around him like a suffocating fog. Panic clawed at his throat. Trapped in a web of fear, he remembered the warnings in the journal. With every ounce of strength, he dashed to the door, heart racing as he pulled on the handle, but it wouldn't budge, locked by some unseen force. He turned back toward the mirror, his reflection returning, eyes wide with terror now. The entity on the other side smiled, reaching through, fingers gliding past the shattered surface. Ethan backed away, but the room closed in, shadows inching toward him, tightening their grasp. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing the darkened woods beyond. With a surge of adrenaline, he bolted outside, gasping for breath, glancing back at the cabin. Yet it stood quiet, serene now, as though nothing had happened. He stumbled into the trees, the way home lost amid the oppressive gloom. Hours later, when dawn broke, Ethan still ran, unaware of the eyes following him from the shadows, waiting for him to look back, to blink. In that moment, when the sun kissed the horizon, he dared to take a glance over his shoulder. The trees shifted, whispering secrets he would never understand, and the forest smiled. And now we move to the final story, where a familiar face at the door may not have been human at all. Through the lonely streets of Eldridge Hollow, twisting around the gnarled branches of the trees that lined the cobblestone path, the moon hung high, shrouded in clouds, casting fleeting shadows every time a gust brushed by. Sarah wrapped her coat tighter around her as she walked home from the late shift at the diner, her footsteps echoing loudly in the stillness. She had always loved the peacefulness of this little town, but tonight, a sense of unease gripped her. Glancing behind her, she saw only darkness, yet an unsettling feeling crept up her spine, the kind that whispered she wasn't alone. She quickened her pace, her heart thumping like a frantic drum. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket and she fished it out, relieved to see a message from her brother. "Hey, you okay? I had a weird feeling." She furrowed her brow, a chill running down her arms. The message was odd, almost as if he sensed something she hadn't shared. She texted back, "Yeah, just heading home." As she turned the corner, the streetlights flickered, bathing the pavement in a stuttering glow. Sarah noticed something out of place. A figure at the end of the street, dark and indistinct, swaying slightly as if caught in an invisible breeze. Panic clawed at her throat and she hesitated. "It's just a trick of the light," she murmured to herself. Yet the figure seemed to draw closer, the darkness around it deepening. With each step it took, she felt a weight on her chest, as if the air itself thickened, pinning her down. "Who's there?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling despite her attempt to sound strong. No answer, only the sound of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. As she turned to retreat, a chilling laugh echoed down the street, eerie and hollow, sending a shiver right through her bones. Was it real or a cruel figment of her imagination? Adrenaline surged and she sprinted toward home, not daring to look back. Reaching her front porch, she stumbled in through the door and slammed it shut behind her, locking it tight. The familiar comfort of her small living room felt miles away from the unease just outside. She sank against the door, gasping, her mind racing. What was that figure? Surely it couldn't have been. A knock reverberated through the house, resonating with a slow, deliberate rhythm. "Sarah?" It was her brother's voice, softer this time, almost pleading. Relief washed over her despite the strangeness of the situation. She rushed to the window and peered out. He stood under the swaying streetlight, looking anxious, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting something. Her heart swelled with worry, but every logical thought was drowned out by her growing dread. She fumbled for her phone to text him, but saw instead a string of increasingly frantic messages flashing on the screen. "Get inside. Stay inside. Don't open the door." Before she could process it, the door behind her creaked open, a cold draft slipping in. Sarah whipped around, her breath hitching in her throat. "It's okay. It's just me." A voice that sounded like her brother's echoed from within her darkened home, but it felt wrong, twisted. The voice was familiar, yet carried an undertone that distorted it, a smoothness she had never heard. Panic surged. Her brother was still outside. She had seen him. The figure was inside, calling to her in his voice. No, it couldn't be. Her gut screamed for her to run, but where could she go? Behind her, the darkness stretched, watching and waiting. Sarah stumbled backward, heart pounding. If you're really my brother, say something only you would know. Silence answered her, thick and suffocating. Then the front door eased open completely, revealing a silhouette that looked just like him but distorted, a grinning face that hovered too close, eyes glinting like glass. The familiarity twisted into something grotesque as it took a step forward, shielded in darkness, the real horror lurking behind. "Sarah," it whispered, the voice oozing with malice. "Let me in." And all the while, outside, a frightened shout pierced the night, a scream swallowed by the wind as the moon gleamed down, indifferent to the nightmare unfolding in Eldridge Hollow. From foggy woods to mirrors that betray us, these 6 true stories remind us that darkness takes many forms. The unknown can watch from the trees, or it can reach out through the glass. Either way, it always finds a way to follow us home. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me in the shadows tonight. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell, and leave a like. It helps bring more of these stories to life, and it makes sure you'll never walk alone into the dark. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, sometimes the reflection isn't yours.